basically the topic already says something about Germany. Roadblocks. Well, it's expensive to build in Germany. Everybody knows that. Challenges, in-house, a good copper network with VDSL vectoring, open access, in-house infrastructure is a big topic. But we also, overbuild has been discussed, so we have lots of nice topics for discussion. And the opportunities, of course, there's still many customers to win, and it's a big country. So Germany has always been a latecomer, has never been an early adopter. So there is still much to do, and there are still many opportunities to gain. So therefore, I think nobody can just say it's totally hopeless. It's moving on. So Christoph, perhaps now we will have short statements from the stakeholders, from the panelists without slides. We hope that this is going to contribute to the liveliness of the discussion. And they will now give their statements in the order as they sit. Christoph, the floor is yours.
Yeah, thank you, Cara, and welcome to all of you. Thanks for showing such a big interest in Germany, one of the countries where the potential for future FTTH deployment is still very high. And there are reasons for that. But let me first give you a short intro on Deutsche Glasfaser. We are an independently financed operator delivering FTTH to the more rural or suburban areas in Germany. We are now around since 2011, starting from a Reggeborg-financed vehicle towards now a equity owners-based company. What we see as the most important challenge for Germany is not only those topics that you mentioned, like how do I get permits and how do I deal with the various municipalities, etc., but more to the point is how can we create and increase the investment momentum. The investment momentum for the German market has lagged a bit in the recent years, and in our opinion, it is now also the job of the government, not only of the investment community and the operator community, but also of the government to reignite this investment momentum. Otherwise, we will not be able to come near the goals we have for 2030 and beyond. And that means also that not only in our industry, but beyond in the administration, we need a mindset that considers investment and the parameters that investment need by making or when they're making their decisions. Last part for the challenge is we have to reduce the cost of doing business, and I think that's a common theme already also taken up by the Commission. How do I get rid of red tape? Not only cut additional red tape that I wanted to introduce, but really cut into the existing red tape. It's easier said than done, I know, but in the end, it will pay dividends. A short intro to the roadblocks we see, apart from permits, etc., is certainly that the NRA is a bit asleep at the wheel at the moment. We see that they are lagging in taking critical decisions. One of them is the SMP-based access to passive infrastructure. They are also very slow in addressing the strategic overbuild by the SMP operators. They are also lagging in a competition-neutral concept for copper switch-off, a concept we have discussed at length yesterday. So what are strategic solutions for Germany? One of them is sure to strive for more EU harmonization, so not gold-plating any rules that are made in Brussels, but just take them as they are, so that solutions can be brought from the EU-wide suppliers to Germany, and we do not need specific solutions. And the second thing is we need a true independence of the SMP operator from the government. Otherwise, we'll always have, or at least think we have, decisions by administrative bodies that do not conform to the complete societal welfare. That's it for the moment.
Thank you, Christoph. Markus, you may want to reply to some of these points. And
well, let me first of all make the statement, it's time actually to be still optimistic on the German fiber market. We have a very strong investment dynamic. We have a very strong competition dynamic. So there's a lot of there are a lot of positive things going on in the German market. For us as Deutsche Telekom, we're actually investing more than 5 billion a year, not only in fiber, but also obviously in mobile infrastructure, but a significant degree in fiber. And our promise until 2030 is actually to have around 25-30 million fiber households deployed, and we're actually keeping pace. Last year, we actually did 2.5 million households, and this is our yearly ambition. So we are quite confident that we keep pace and invest even more. Our milestone last year was around 10 million households, and our new milestone is in 27, around 17 million households covered. So that actually shows you that as Deutsche Telekom, we're really trying to keep the pace up and hopefully are very successful in our mission. There's also a strong infrastructure competition. We heard yesterday in your workshop, we had around 250 operators that somewhat investing in fiber. So there is competition, and we also, as Deutsche Telekom, have some cooperation models in place, around 40 corporations, together with other companies, together with Stadtwerke. We are actually trying to make the best thing for a very specific region. One joint venture we have is together with Matthias, EWE, we actually created a joint venture, it's called Glasfaser Nordwest. So we are really trying to penetrate the market with FTTH, with fiber. So we are actually quite confident that we are keeping the pace up. So is everything great in the German market? Of course, there are some roadblocks. You mentioned, Christoph, it's the one problem is the high rise of costs. We all have, as an industry, a cost issue, obviously. It's too expensive. We need fast and standardized approval procedures, a general reduction of bureaucracy, which is really a big problem, not only on the state level, but also on the federal state level. We have all these Bundesländer with a very specific legislation in place. So we actually need to do that. And another very specific German problem is the in-house structure, which really is crucial for the copper fiber migration issue. You cannot connect without getting access to the especially multi-dwelling units. That's a massive problem in Germany, and hopefully there's also some approval by the new government, at least that's our expectation, to solve that issue in favor for the market actually to get access and to increase the connection level. The second roadblock could be actually, Christoph mentioned the overbuild debate, a very emotional debate that goes nowhere. It goes nowhere because it's about competition, and it's a debate when we actually look to Spain, Portugal, Italy, with a coverage of 50 to 70, even more 70% of overbuild. And in Germany, we were talking about 2 to 3%. So it goes nowhere, and the single answer to that question is it's about competition, and you cannot change competition, at least you shouldn't try. Otherwise, you're ending up in deep shit. I think those who want some monopolies, they actually must understand that it's not part of the regulation and the story of regulation to give them monopolies or even to optimize their problematic business case. That's at least not what I have realized and understood about regulation. And the third one could actually be that it's not a really good idea to ignore what the customer wants. And a similar hype debate, like the overbuild debate that goes nowhere, is the copper fiber migration debate. It's also very emotional in Germany. Some actually believe it's a better idea to tell the customer what to do and not to do. And that's not simply our impression. That's not the lesson we have learned. Actually, we've done some migration before. Think about the all IP migration. Is that a signal for me?
No.
I understand.
No. Go on. It's 5 minutes. But sorry, I wasn't aware that it's really.
Well, okay. I'm actually trying to finish, the point is
make your points.
The point is that cohesion,
artificial intelligence,
simply won't work. But anyway, we are preparing as Deutsche Telekom for the migration issue. And we have some very interesting debates in the Gigabit Forum. Kara, you actually described it yesterday in your workshop. There's a lot of work we are doing there. We have done some pilots actually to get some lessons out of that business, how to improve and to get more speed for the migration issue. So that keeps us very busy in Germany. Sometimes we're talking too much, quite frankly. Sometimes I believe it would be much better just to do it. But we are a very, very thorough regulatory market. So we need to discuss everything in very detail before doing anything. Perhaps that's a disadvantage or an advantage of our market. We can decide it afterwards. So that was my short statement.
Many thanks, Markus. I think we'll come back to some of the points you raised in the discussion. Matthias, now the turn is yours.
Thank you, Kara, that I can share some of my views on the status quo of the fiber rollout in Germany and on the future development. First of all, EWE, the company I work with, is a regional altnet in the northwest of Germany, covering 10% of the German area. Municipality based, 75% belong to the cities and counties, and we focus on consumers and on business customers, and we focus on fixed network and mobile. That's what we sell to the customers. We love cooperation, as you mentioned, Markus. Cooperation is key, and I would like to broaden our view of FTTH, which is often focused on consumers and on family houses and apartment buildings a little bit, to the dimension of business customers. And I'd like to address the issue of fixed mobile convergence. That is the dimension in which we have to think if we want to make Europe strong and competitive and digitally sovereign. And it also helps to look back a little bit. How did we get there? How did the German situation how did it start? How did Germany get to this point? For example, to avoid new mistakes and to avoid a wrong conclusion. The most common reason for finishing late is starting late. Germany just started late in FTTH. The National Regulatory Authority allowed for vectoring, and Germany even used state funding for vectoring when other member states of the European Union had long switched to FTTH. All the more, and the VDSL bandwidth, that's what we see in the market today, What we hear from the customers when we ring on the door, the VDSL bandwidth is still attractive to the consumers. All the more as Germany is not very digitalized in administration, in business, and in private life. When you see this situation, our progress concerning FTTH rollout is not too bad. Our numbers of FTTH homes passed and homes connected, homes activated is quite good. The German telco providers dig as much as possible, ring on the doors and sell FTTH. We do what we can. My company cooperates with Deutsche Telekom, with a competitor in the fiber rollout, and our joint venture, the common joint venture, is selling bitstream access to every provider that is interested in the best possible way, equivalence of input. There is a vivid ecosystem in Germany of providers that are interested in building networks, in finding solutions, in selling their networks to others, in improving the network utilization. And the last example for this is Deutsche Glasfaser and EWE making a letter of intent on the exchange of layer 2 bitstream access. So, is everything fine now in Germany? No, not at all. There are important challenges. Let me just mention two of them. The most important one is the convergence of fixed and mobile networks. We cannot longer consider FTTH in isolation, separate from mobile communications. Fixed networks and mobile networks are growing together, technically and economically. Consumers get attractive product bundles. They can use their connectivity seamlessly everywhere. This is a new dimension of connectivity and of mobility, and business customers, which we are also focused on, like many other regional providers, receive a completely new dimension of reliability through a mobile backup. New locations of a business customers are connected to the network in a flash via mobile communications while the FTTH connection is built. This is a dramatic change in quality and reliability. It has been technically possible since 20 years. We saw this fixed mobile convergence on the horizon. But now, in the wake of digitalization of all areas of life, this possibility is becoming crucial for the providers. So if you want to address business customers, and this is what a lot of alternative FTTH deployers in Germany focus on, and where they are strong, you have to be able to integrate mobile and fixed services. But in Germany, the three mobile network operators, the three established mobile network operators, restrict access to their networks against all independent experts.
Sorry,
and
this was just for non-discrimination reasons.
Okay.
Please go on.
I will quickly finish. Against all independent experts and antitrust authorities. So we have a solution to find a solution for this. The recent decision of the Bundesnetzagentur, maybe we can discuss it further, creates a new problem, a new challenge, a new roadblock. Another crucial problem for FTTH deploys in Germany is a rebate scheme, the so-called commitment model for FTTC, VDSL vectoring, that makes it difficult for big hole buyers to buy from altnets in Germany. So, are we making big mistakes again?
Okay, so we will have lots of questions after each of you has had its chance to make their statement. So now it's your turn, Thomas.
Thank you very much, and welcome everybody. My name is Thomas Kaltoff. I'm an investment director at the DWS on the infrastructure private equity investment team. Obviously, DWS is part of the broader Deutsche Bank Group. And we represent a very small pot of capital that is acting in the same way that, for example, Christoph's shareholders are. I'm definitely not a telco expert, so I'm probably the odd one out on this panel, given that as you said, I invest on a non-discriminatory basis. I don't care whether it is biogas in Spain or fiber in Germany or roadways or anything else or hospitals in Italy.
We are quite diversified on that front, and so I take perhaps a slightly different view than some of my co-panelists here. But as majority owner of Deutsche Giganetz in Germany, obviously we do have a view on the sector, and I think we see quite a few issues. I think number one is, as much as we are building today as a sector overall, the speed has reduced, and we are nowhere near achieving what we had planned to achieve and what the German government had wanted all of us to achieve. So we're miles behind any kind of target, and the problem is, yes, we started late, absolutely, but we're also not doing anything sensible to catch up on that, and I think that is embarrassing as a country. And I think if we want to keep Germany competitive, then we probably should be working more together and less against each other. With regards to the overbuild discussion, I think there's a specific view as well. We've clearly missed our targets. We've not managed to connect everybody at least once. So why are we overbuilding each other? Again, it makes no sense from an economic perspective at this stage. I'm not saying that from antitrust perspective it may be perfectly legal, but from an overall economic perspective, it is not in the interest of the country what we're doing here as a sector, and we're not helping ourselves. And now we've put ourselves in a situation where we had an election, we're having a new government, and things are changing. We all see what the investment focus will be in the coming years: defense, roads, rail, a number of other infrastructure projects where digitalization plays a, let's say, comparably minor role. But the issue is much broader than that, because we have one of the issues realistically is capacities and in resources we need, and the other one is restrictions on capacities of financing. There's a number of financing banks in this room, and obviously ING is also kindly sponsoring the event at various points. But if we go through it step by step, I think Deutsche Glasfaser, together with the Center of European Politics, has done a very good study on this, which was released, I think, 2 weeks ago, Christoph. We still think FTTH is the only sector out there that's really relevant. I can tell you there's a lot more investment going into data centers right now than it is in FTTH. And beyond that, also mobile and other topics. So I think we need to be realistic. But more importantly, if you look at the overall investment that we need in Germany, FTTH isn't really the big numbers driver. What's big is the energy world and the transportation world. And we're all competing for the same pots of capital, be it from people like us, investors like us, or be it from the banks. And if you look at the availability of capital and the amount of capital needed across every sector, I don't think we're doing ourselves a favor, because from a risk-reward perspective, probably would more invest in energy right now, because there's very low downside risk and there's very guaranteed returns, and you have a lot of benefits in the sector without many of the downsides. Whereas we are basically, instead of working together and making our sector better, shooting each other in the knee and not helping each other. And I think the other one is on the resources. If the cost of, and I think it's obviously part of the regulation that not you, but your colleagues are responsible for. If an energy provider gets all of its costs plus its return on equity, divides it by the number of units it ships, and then just charges a per unit price, then it doesn't really matter how much the cost of debt is, because you just pass it on and it ends up in all of our power bills. We don't have the ability. And the same goes for resources. If I'm a construction company and I have to negotiate with any of us, that's a rough start. It's going to be a hard day in the office, because we want to make sure that quality, timing, pricing, everything works. If you're a utility that just passes on the costs and on the energy side, then it's probably a lot easier to negotiate a higher price. And we're not helping ourselves as a sector to make ourselves attractive across various items. And I think we really need to get back together, rally together, and come up with a more smooth way of executing. Not saying there should be no competition, but I think for the next few years, we need to do our homework better.
Thank you. Now, Annegret, it's the regulator's turn.
Yes, thank you. So I have been listening, of course, the whole time and on a very interesting discussion and presentations, because it shows already one thing. The German market is quite, let's say, not complicated but diverse. We see a lot of different operator and business models, and also in terms of scale, there are regional operators, there are wholesale-only operators, there are national operators, of course, and this is something that is quite unique compared to other European countries, and that requires being factored in the regulation. We have also heard a lot of other challenges that we face right now that are partly out of control of the operators or the sector as a whole, like the limited capacity in construction, which is a difficulty and which drives indeed costs, but also the fact that, again, compared to France or Spain, in Germany we don't have ducts everywhere, which facilitates the rollout and which also simplifies the rollout. It was also mentioned we have quite complex building ownership structures, which again poses a challenge outside of the control of the operators, as well as outside the control of the regulator. So we indeed now need to find a way to look at this jointly, and I think that is something that I haven't heard yet, and that is of course the role of the regulator in this process, in this migration process also, and I come back to this in a moment, to make sure that we look at this in a holistic way, and by this I mean, of course, looking at competition, but not for the sake of competition, but to achieve the targets for the users, for the benefit of the users, and of course also have a proper investment case with an efficient rollout, because I agree we cannot finance additional capacity, and we need again to see how we can incentivize, in particular, for example, users to increase the rate of return. We had seen that the take-up is very slow, and that is due to the fact that a lot of customers currently feel well served, and I think we cannot blame the customer for this. It is a consequence, but we need to see how we can push this, let's say, in the middle term, and of course for the regulator here needs to find ways to push this, and in particular to push migration. Because that clearly, if we believe in all these targets that are set out, there will be a user case, and everyone will need ultimately the fiber. Otherwise, I think we should not do it. But I think this will be, but it will not happen tomorrow. And I think we need to also, let's say, synchronize this, synchronize the expectations, and make sure that the timing is right, and this also then, I think, will help. We are currently working on a plan on various elements of how we can incentivize copper fiber migration, whether there needs to be a change of the law to facilitate this process. But we don't want to wait until this happens with a new government. But we are already doing something, and that is having installed and particularly, again, looking at this topic in the Gigabit Forum, where we discuss it with all market participants. And I think here it is important that everyone buys in, because I hear a lot, and I agree partly with it, that there is a lot of red tape which we need to reduce. But by the way, not every regulation is red tape. Let's make this difference clear as well. But then this also includes that in the Gigabit Forum, we move forward and not just blocking each other as sometimes seems to be the case. As I mentioned, we are currently working on the 3 elements of a copper migration plan, trying to provide very soon in the kind of more concrete guidelines in order how to do this and how to proceed on this in order to get this kick-started with a more, let's say, in a more targeted way. So that's the regulators also controlled, and I'm closing in that I think also we need to have an effort of all, and the regulator stands ready here to push the process and ensure efficient solutions across the board. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Let me take up this copper fiber migration topic that was mentioned by most of you. And indeed, there is a very rational process going on, quite a constructive process going on the one hand. And at some podiums, you have very emotional debates. One thing I'm going to ask you later is when is copper switch off taking place in Germany? But let's see, as we all know, it will take a while. What needs to be done until then? For instance, Matthias, there's one question I would like to ask you. What do you think has to be done for a competitively neutral migration now? What can be done at this stage where we still know it's going to take a number of years?
Yeah, Kara, thank you for the question. I asked, are we making mistakes again? And the next big mistake is waiting around the corner regarding copper switch off. I think in order to answer your question, we have to think it over. We have to have a concept on copper fiber migration before we start, before the first things by the copper owner are submitted. It would be crucial. It would be a very big damage to the competition and to the alternates in Germany, who have been responsible for 60% of the FTTH rollout. If the copper owner, which is Deutsche Telekom, would be allowed to carry out the copper switch off in these altnet areas at less favorable conditions than in the own FTTH rollout, which is done by Deutsche Telekom itself. It should be non-discriminatory, and that has to be clear before the first ideas to switch off certain copper areas are submitted to the Bundesnetzagentur. So we need a concept as the first step.
Can you make it more concrete? Because we all love the word non-discrimination, sounds great, but what would it mean?
It would mean wherever a FTTH network has been built, a certain area, maybe around the street cabinet, then under certain conditions, the copper should be switched off, and we should be decisive and we should be quick. We should leave nobody behind. We should not tell the customer what to do. As you mentioned, Markus, the customer has, of course, the right to choose. But what we should be decisive on is to switch off the copper network as quick as possible. This would be a very good thing in order to compensate the big mistakes that we have made. If we have made this way around vectoring and we are late, then we can boost the FTTH rollout if we are quick now, if we are clear, and if we have a good and successful and non-discriminatory migration from the old copper world to the fiber world.
Markus, do you want to say something?
It's difficult actually where to start. If you would have understood that you shouldn't decide over the customer demand, you must understand that it's not a good idea to tell them, I shut down copper if you don't want to migrate on fiber. It's just not a very good idea, quite frankly. The second stuff about this concept, I mean, first of all, it's actually property of Deutsche Telekom, which is quite easy and straightforward. Now, we have to decide how to actually to give our clients the best deal and offer, and what the customer really wants. And if he doesn't want fiber, it's not a very nice thing. Actually, we are quite interested in a customer who orders fiber, but I wouldn't actually agree that we should overrule his wish and demand. It just doesn't really work. And the second stuff clearly is, I mean, you've been in the Gigabit Forum, and our dear competitors, they weren't really able actually to write a joint statement on that they agree on open access. Not even that they agree upon. So for us, it's really crucial that we decide which kind of different offers we order by other competitors, which we are doing. I mentioned we have about 40 different cooperation projects going on. Different level of corporations, passive, active infrastructure, joint venture, name it. But behind that is obviously the idea that if we offer our clients a contract, it must be very, very detailed. We must have the service level, we must have the similar price to what we offer. That's really crucial. And competitors, without even actually declaring that they're interested in open access, it's just a waste of time very often. And unfortunately, it goes nowhere even in the Gigabit Forum. That's really, really bad, quite frankly. And then we're actually wasting time.
Christoph, you are one of these dear competitors. Perhaps.
Yeah. Again, where shall I start? Have more than 5 minutes here. Anyway, so
you saved earlier, so.
Yeah. 2 minutes to go more. Open access. Sorry, this is an area where the situation on the ground in Germany is much better than we all think or is projected to us. There may be a disagreement in some working groups in the Gigabit Forum, but there is no disagreement in the market what's the standard and how we go forward. And that's why at least Deutsche Glasfaser, but also others, are able to sign up wholesale partners like EWE, like Vodafone, like Net Cologne, so all the regional and national, or some of the national ISPs. So in practice, it is working. If we do not agree in some working groups, that if there's a unity concept.
No, come on, that's too easy.
We have
250 operators. Yeah. Do you want to negotiate with all of them?
You don't need to. There are aggregators out there that you could use.
Yeah, exactly. And they're not even agreeing on a simple passage like, hey, we are in favor of open access and we share a similar pricing than to the regulated pricing. No, quite frankly, it goes nowhere.
Would be nice to have figures at some point. Perhaps in this year, it has not been so easy to produce concrete figures on open access. I think that would be something nice because we keep hearing about the wedge between, yes, we are having all these contracts, and still we have, if you look at reports of Bundesnetzagentur or in the Gigabit Forum, there are no figures on the table, and it's quite, honestly, I'm very much in favor of, as an economist looking at the economy as a whole, to have migration happen at a good pace. However, in a country like Germany, where you have altnets that will at some point be in a monopoly position, you need open access working. working in a way that consumers have choice. And it would tremendously help if at some point we had some evidence.
But sorry, we're talking about it as if open access is rocket science. Look at the power market. It's like super easy. It's not that difficult, and it works very well. And the same, again, we're talking about FTTH here and copper switch off. Copper switch off will happen. Obviously, the German government basically decided latest by 2045, because by that time we want to be climate neutral. Climate neutral means there's going to be one network, and it's going to be the most energy efficient one. Everything else will have to be switched off, because decarbonization means you need to bring down your power usage and increase your renewable generation. As simple as that. Other sectors simply are the overall wish of the European Union feeding through into our sector. We can deny it or not, but it will have to happen. How they then regulate for it, whether they price certain other products out of the market or make you buy certificates to make it unattractive for you to automatically switch off that sector, I leave that to the regulator, and that's why we have a regulator. But I think we're pretending open access is so difficult when in most other sectors, mobile, power, gas, it works perfectly fine. So why not for us?
But we have seen that for 25 years, that you have a perfectly homogeneous product in energy, and you have monopoly networks that are unbundled. So that's a very different setting, where obviously for some, we have met many utilities, energy utilities in Germany in the telco market. There's already been one round where they all sold off, because they realized, this energy business is quite different from the telco business. You have all this product differentiation discussion, and you have modems, and I think it's more complex, but still there are countries that have managed well. Switzerland is quite interesting in that regard. So let's see. We would like to see some figures, I think, at some point on open access. There's one other question I would like.
I wasn't finished, so
Okay,
when we
sorry.
went down the rabbit hole of open access,
Okay. It's a rabbit hole.
it's
yes.
a rabbit hole, and I could also say that there are some figures, there will be some figures, but don't underestimate the operational complexity in implementing open access with the current framework. Although we have standardization, married to different IT systems with a standard, and everybody looks in the standard in a different dialect. So in the end, it will work, but it will take time. And that's just how it is.
And I would like to have a concept on open access. I mean,
don't need a
the
concept,
whole
just sign our contract.
The whole market actually now is crying for a concept on this copper migration stuff, and you cannot even agree on an open access concept.
We don't need
but
to agree on open. It's there. We have a
Open access-
standard.
So we have a lively discussion.
Yeah.
I'm going to.
If I may, open access is reality. And please, again, broaden your view. We have open access on FTTC. We have open access on dark fiber for fiber to the site, for connecting antennas. We have open access for business products. We have a very vivid exchange between the companies since 20 years. I don't think we need figures. We need numbers on this. We have to see the practice, and if it starts late with FTTH, there is again a reason, because we started late with FTTH. The Gigabit Forum discusses only FTTH open access. If it would discuss FTTC open access, it would see a lot of more cooperation. And let me say one last thing, and that is really another problem in Germany. There is a contract in the market. It is a rebate scheme. It's the so-called commitment model, which hinders the big whole buyers like 1&1, Telefonica, Vodafone, to buy from alternates. If you start counting how many addresses does Telefonica buy from alternates, you have to consider that Telefonica has to fill up its contract with Deutsche Telekom on VDSL commitment. And that is a problem in the market. We have to solve this problem, and then let's count how much open access on FTTH exists.
Annegret, you have to say something now.
Yes, I think as I said, this is something that we are working on, and of course, I think there are different elements in this process, and one is certainly the question on how to link non-discrimination and open access, and I think that is where we are stuck in the discussion in the Gigabit Forum. So we are hoping that we can progress on this with our more concrete guidelines and the way that we try to, let's say, overcome the blockage that we currently see. But we also see that there is a chance to overcome it.
So I may try now again to dig us out of the open access rabbit hole and go down to the well-worn rabbit hole of copper switch-off again, because frankly I was not surprised, but nevertheless I think we'll come back to you in a couple of years and see if there's one remaining customer on your copper network that is standing with a shotgun at his house and say, "You're not taking down my copper network, and I will be the last one." Will you then run the whole copper network just for him? I think when we see the practice in all the other EU countries that have done a copper switch-off, then yes, we have to deal with customers, the remaining, let's say, 2%, but we'll find solutions for them, and it's not like we take it to the last one. Just one thing. On the general level, apart from what Matthias said on the non-discrimination issue and on the kind of speed issue, so what are the incentives to speed up copper switch-off is one thing, how to ensure non-discrimination is the other. It's also important that we introduce in the regulation a concept of equivalence of switching. So we have the equivalence of input now in deploying the...
Nice.
Yeah.
It's a new phrase, isn't it?
You're welcome to use it. Equivalence of
I
switching, what it means let's a non-discriminatory process regarding all the retail and wholesale deadlines that you need, like stop sell and removing your customer base, etc., etc. So if we can coin the phrase equivalence of switching, I would be happy. I will not get any royalties on that one, but for me it's an important part of such a concept. And the third element is, if we do such a concept, we should focus on the process for the remaining active copper users and usages, and not use that as a basis to have a whole new discussion on deployment and on all the other figures. So, welcome to the rabbit hole again.
Well, WIC has done several studies on that with phases and when stop sell, etc. So I won't go into this again. I would like to raise perhaps a change of topic, because we keep being annoyed by the fact that there's a lack of demand in Germany. Now, if I compare the prices of a gigabit and the extra price you have to pay for coming from 250 or 500 to the gigabit, Germany has quite a high markup, and I'm always wondering whether this belief that this high ARPU is going to save you one day, whether that's the right way of solving this lack of demand problem, whether it's not you have P times X. And I'm just wondering, if I look at other countries where the lack of demand is much lower, you see that the markup for high speeds is not as high as it is in Germany. It has declined. The markup has declined over the years, but it's still quite considerable. And I keep hearing that we want to that there is this hope for the great price for 1 gig. I'm just wondering whether it's ever going to come, having witnessed this market for 25 years, where you always had basically customers pay €5 for something better, but not much more. So I'm just wondering, how can you boost demand other than vouchers?
Oh.
Who wants to start?
I can take that one. first try. I would already not buy the argument that we have a lack of demand due to the pricing structure, and I don't see many countries that have solved their lack of demand by pricing, and please don't come with Switzerland. If you take the Swiss penetration rate, and it's almost the same as in competitors' networks in Germany with their different pricing structure. That's one thing. Second thing, we have to consider that building networks in Germany is much more expensive. So the incremental cost or the incremental invest you have for the new service has to be financed one way or the other. And it's not like, okay, I'm going from VDSL to VDSL2 with another line card and an additional €5. So one way or the other, the industry has to gain a decent ARPU. Third thing, if we talk about pricing, we just always take a look just at the consumer pricing, but we have to also take a look onto the incentives of all the retail operators. So why should they go into a sales process, initiate a sales process, incur the sales cost for the same revenue they had with their previous product? It doesn't make sense. So we need also an incentive for them to gain more revenues, to go into an effective and active sales process for fiber. And that's, for me, good enough reason not to prematurely discuss pricing here.
I don't want to talk about the vouchers because you said we shouldn't.
You can talk about the
But
vouchers.
again,
But that's
from an
against state
external
money.
perspective, again, the key question is how do we get Germany fiberized? And it's a pure supply-demand perspective. There will always be address points that are so ridiculously expensive that you will need some form of subsidy. But ultimately, the idea of a voucher is just, from a governmental perspective, either use 3 billion in subsidies or 3 billion in vouchers. And I can tell you, with 3 billion in vouchers, we would all be building a whole load more than we are with 3 billion in subsidies. And it's just a question for the government and the regulator. What is the best and most cost-effective way to deliver the 100% fiberization of the country? And to me, I don't want to talk about vouchers, but it's just, we need to look at it from the other direction as well. What is the best way to get there and the quickest way to get there? And I don't know whether vouchers is the best option, but it's certainly a whole lot better than the subsidy model we have right now.
Another fan of the voucher?
I don't want to talk about vouchers too, but in a situation where VDSL is still attractive, where digitalization is lagging behind in Germany, vouchers are exactly the right thing to do. Not to give a lot of money, but to use the money that would otherwise be put into digging, into subsidies for digging, which is critical because then digging prices rise. In this situation, vouchers are exactly the same. Let's just try vouchers. Why do we wait for this?
I'm not actually believing in vouchers at all. It's just a waste of money, quite frankly, from a state perspective and from a taxpayer's perspective. At the end, we believe as Deutsche Telekom demand will come anyway. It will come. You just need to be very, very patient. That's the first thing. The second thing is, and from a personal view, never change a running system. So many people outside, many customers, they actually saying, hey, I have a good access, it works. Changes are complicated, especially in this German system. And this is what we're going to tackle. It mustn't be difficult for a customer. So we have a lot of work to do as operator, actually, to have these end-to-end processes. That's, I believe, the answer to that question, to make it easier for the customer, which unfortunately isn't easy for us. But I believe that's the solution to the problem at the longer run. At the short run, obviously, we need to be very, very patient. And price, obviously, is one particular thing we can actually Schrauben. I don't know the English word for that. But anyway, but only to a certain extent. Otherwise, you're just wasting your investment money.
I keep having a debate with all of these guys on active versus passive products, because we believe in product differentiation and think that's much more stimulated by passive access, and we see Deutsche in their cooperation agreements mostly focusing on some form. They're very different, but mostly focusing on passive products, and I can understand why. Whereas other operators love the bitstream system. I was the first one to analyze a market and define a bitstream market when it didn't exist, but now the operators all love bitstreams, which makes it more difficult to product differentiate and generate competition, sustainable competition in areas where you won't have infrastructure competition. But perhaps we shouldn't open this box unless, Annegret, you also want to say something on this topic?
Well, just to say that I think we need to have both. I don't want to speak about vouchers. We are skeptical as well, but I think the point is it's certainly not only about pricing, but you can also not exclude pricing and maybe a general addressing the general marketing, and with this facilitating expectations and willingness to A, to pay, and B, to actually switch. Yeah? So to explain this to the users rather than make it more complicated and say, well, you don't need to change in the end. Yeah? Because I think in the end, as I said before, they will need to, at a certain moment, to switch. And one of the things that we identified in a recent BEREC report on switching off copper in Europe with a lot of case studies was indeed that one of the key factors for success is explaining the process properly to the end users. Now that was something that was really, really important. And of course, the regulator also can share this task. But I think this is first of all, of course, something for the operators and the providers.
But I love how the regulator, as an extended arm of the government, talks about.
We are independent.
Yeah, I know, but explaining something to the end customer, and at the same time simply recommends to car manufacturers to stop building internal combustion engines by 2030. Nobody asked me whether I want a bloody electric car. I don't want one. Yeah, but it was still decided by somebody else on my behalf, and it's like, I mean. For something that is a lot higher capex element for me as a person than my fiber connection. And we can take these decisions, obviously, independently of asking everybody, because I can tell you the majority of people would have said no. And we didn't. So why if we do it for something that expensive and that massive as personal investment, why can't we do it for something that is as simple?
Sorry, I wasn't suggesting asking every of our 80 million inhabitants. I was just saying that currently, in a lot of cases, the let's say the marketing or the way it is presented to end users is quite difficult to understand, and plus the price barrier, the premium that you mentioned. Yeah? I recently got, just now as a very brief example, and this is of course a personal user perspective, not as a regulator, I got an offer to switch to fiber. And it was very attractive in the basic price, which would increase, of course, after 9 months or something. But by the way, here I have also to buy or to rent the additional part, and here and there. So in the end, it was quite expensive if I calculate everything.
Okay.
Fiber is expensive.
Perhaps we should have that pricing debate at the end of our panel again. Okay. Among ourselves, because I want one sentence?
2 sentences.
Okay, 2 sentences.
One sentence, don't short active wholesale products because they offer a very good access a low barrier of access for all the retail operators.
Okay.
First sentence, second sentence, there is actually, for the same level of speeds and the higher reliability of fiber, usually the same pricing. So you have no premium for the fiber, you have a premium for higher speed on the fiber that on average gives the higher up.
Okay, let's debate that afterwards, because I want one short question to all of those panelists before opening to the floor for questions. Where do you see Germany in 2030 in terms of coverage, take-up, penetration?
Considering the current trajectory, or if something gets better?
I asked you the question, I want a simple answer, no debate now.
2030, 80%, 85% coverage, and on that coverage, I would say around 50-55% take-up.
50-55?
50 to 55.
Yeah.
On that coverage.
Yeah, sure.
Markus?
85 coverage, yeah, I would actually agree on that. Perhaps even more, but I'm not a prophet. Take up, yeah, I think less than 50.
Penetration?
I don't like so much these numbers. I would agree to the proposals of Christoph. I'm an optimistic person, but I really fear that we don't tackle the right problems. We have to solve the problems, and then we will see what the numbers in 2030 are.
Okay, so no numbers from you.
I'm more pessimistic, 75%, but I'd also say 50-55% take up on that 75%. I think we focus more on the areas where you really have higher interest.
Annegret, you have a set for us?
Difficult to say. So I would say clearly we will not reach, at the current pace, we will not reach the targets. So for the individual figures, I cannot make a guess.
Okay, so now we have 11 minutes to go, so I would like to open for questions of the floor. Here is the first question. You will get a mic because we are sitting in this huge place. So no, please say first whom you represent.
Yeah, I'm Norbert Ebinger, and I'm representing Heights Telecom. And my question is an unpleasant one. It's for Markus, but Thomas mentioned that we are overbuilding the fiber. So my question to Markus is, did you experience in your territory that someone else was overbuilding your fiber, or is just for the altcos that they experience this?
No, that's part of the competition. So actually half of the cases, other operators are overbuilding us. So it's pretty clear that this is part of what we call infrastructure competition, which is part, perhaps a symptom, but at least it's a phenomena of a competition market, which is actually fair enough. We're not complaining about competition as Deutsche Telekom, but we just describe the phenomena. Others actually do it differently, but that's their case, not ours.
Okay, but if the goal is to have 100% coverage of fiber in Germany, then maybe the regulators should take care of not to have such overbuilding, but focusing on the rural areas and split this.
No, I completely disagree. I mean, since it's part of competition, what do you want to do actually?
I want the infrastructure be there first, and then open access, and then competition. Yeah, but the infrastructure must be built first.
Yeah, but competition is not a state plan. Competition is dynamic, and if competition isn't sustainable, then competition will do it differently.
Okay, I think we have to look beyond the press release of Binetza with the 50% to 50% cases, due to the fact that afterwards Binetza asked to verify the cases brought against alternative operators, respectively against Deutsche Telekom, and the majority of the cases brought against the alternate operators was not an actual overbuild, but a build out in the same area, but not over the network.
It's not true.
It's true.
No?
Okay,
Nevertheless,
thank you.
You see, the overbuild debate is a very still hot debate in Germany, also due to the fact that the word infrastructure competition is used sometimes in a very naive way, just saying if there are two networks, that's good. It depends on the circumstances, and it depends especially on the economics, and WIC also did a good study on that one, sharing a more nuanced view on the subject.
Yeah,
But
Christoph,
but
thank you for the
perhaps now I would
explanation.
like to have the regulator monitors overbuild in Germany, and for 2 years now. So perhaps you can
Well, we
say
published the interim report in April 2024, so more or less 1 year. And the BNetzA and the ruling chamber is looking now, and also got further information from the operators and is monitoring the process. And we are now assessing the data that we additionally requested from the operator. And try doing the legal assessment as well, whether we can put together the facts and the case. I don't have an exact timing now, but certainly we are in the process of closing the assessment and of having some sort of final report.
Okay. So perhaps, Nona, there is someone behind me.
Before I pass the microphone.
It's not a one-man show. Perhaps others should also have a chance to ask questions.
Hi, Luis Borrell from Arthur the Little in the UK.
I couldn't.
Luis Borrell from Arthur the Little in the UK.
Okay.
I just wanted to widen a bit the debate and the demand that we all agree is a very important factor. We have seen in the UK Sky, the satellite pay TV operator, announcement to move into all IP and helping the take-up of fiber by Openreach and City Fiber. Could we see that in Germany? Sky Deutschland is equally a very important pay TV operator with many millions of subscribers. Will you see that? Is that something to work on?
I don't think that Sky is such a relevant operator in the broadband space. Usually, if you book a Sky service, it's run via one of your operators instead. So basically, there's no impact, I would say.
Currently, I think there still is the public policy of having 100% coverage. We discussed it yesterday, whether that's a realistic scenario or not, but it would only be, you first have to admit that this won't happen before you talk about, I think, satellite.
Yeah, I meant as a demand factor for you, not as a competitor, if that could make sense, as anyone wholesaling fiber. You in general, the sector, not you.
I don't see that as a relevant player for fiber in Germany at the moment.
There is a question
Or for
here in
fiber
the front
demand
row.
additional.
Then there are two more questions. Oh, I've seen it. I've seen you. There's one here. There's one.
I'll try to make it quick. Sven Erik Horn from Bird & Bird in Germany. Question in the direction of Deutsche Telekom, and on the basis of what Thomas has said. We have examples in the industry where change was forced on the customers. One is the television situation where the analog signals were simply switched off and all of the customers had to buy new television sets. It was announced way ahead of time so that all the customers had the time to do that. Another example is from Deutsche Telekom itself, when Deutsche Telekom decided to switch off its ISDN services. There were no concerns to write letters to the customers and saying that they would actually terminate the agreements with the customers. So my question actually is, what is hindering Deutsche Telekom and what is hindering the regulator to think about sending letters to the customers 5 years ahead of time, which would be this year, to tell them that there will be a copper switch off and DSL will be no longer available, but that the market will make sure that fiber as an alternative will be available to buy?
Well, this is what I said. I mean, we've done migration issues before, and we know exactly what's the best way actually to start communication with the customer. Well, in terms of copper fiber migration, obviously, there must be a sufficient infrastructure to migrate upon. Otherwise, the customer is deeply, deeply screwed and irritated, and that's certainly not what we can afford to. We have actually tried this process you just mentioned, sending out letters in one of our pilots. So we have actually starting to get some lessons learned, and we know how the process really works. So that's not a mystery for us anymore, but really, really concentrating actually on the rollout, obviously, first. Then comes the communication towards the customer. It's just a different phase we're in.
Okay, there was another question here in the front row.
Hi, Alex Burkhead, Telco Titans. I'm actually picking up on the earlier point, which I think may have been misconstrued. Sky in the UK is a massive ISP, so it's a retail-led operation, not forget the TV, I mean, it's bundled. So I think the point here was, could Germany benefit from a top-down demand, so the retailer-led? It's very much an operator perspective that we're hearing here on the whole, but it's also got an impression that Telefonica, for example, is suffering from a take-or-pay lock-in, or not suffering, but it means that the altnets are struggling to bring up demand from the big ISPs. In the UK, 3 ISPs dominate the market, 70% market share. I know Germany's different, but I think, you know, could the demand come from the retailers rather than the operators pushing? So more of a pull demand or driving that side?
I think we Germans have problem to catch your question.
Yeah.
So
Apologies for
put
that.
it more slowly and clearly so that they can... Sorry.
Carried away in my enthusiasm. Can demand come more from the ISP side? In the UK, 3 big ISPs dominate the market, and 2 of them are captured, so it's vertically integrated, such as this very, very pro-competitive Deutsche Telekom, which is great. But could that be driving the demand? So I think, don't think of Sky as a broadcaster, think of them as a big retail brand. And you obviously have some very strong retailers. Could they drive this more? And does the market have to be unlocked? Because it sounds like Telefonica, for example, is having to honor its contractual obligations to take a lot of connections from Deutsche Telekom, which means it's somewhat constrained, and perhaps the regulator should unlock that, or the market needs to adjust.
Yeah, basically that's what we've been discussing here, that the big retail ISPs, so that would be Sky or TalkTalk, in the UK, and that for us it's United Internet 1&1 or Vodafone or Telefonica O2. Those are big independent retail ISPs that on the one hand are on the copper platform of Deutsche Telekom, and that's what the commitment model, the rebate model is about that Matthias talked about. But surely they are an important part of the retail demand on as well Deutsche Telekom's network as our network. Mm-hmm. And therefore, we take steps to bring them onto our networks, and that was the open access debate we're having. So Vodafone is on our network, smaller regional ISPs like Net Cologne and Mnet in Munich is on our network, and also EWE now in the Northwest. So we are capturing this demand, but it's a very slow process due to quite a heavy IT investment that has to take place.
I think that was one of the learnings also of the pilots, that to bring the big ISPs onto the system, and I think some progress will be made in the next few. We are time over. There was one question all the way in the back. If you are brief,
If not, no.
Otherwise, we will not answer.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. I promise I will be brief. Emmanuel Attali, Société Générale, French bank. I work as an industry consultant. Very quick question on the overbuild. Does any one of you have an estimate of the number of overbuild or overlap cases in Germany today?
Well, I think the monitoring agency should say something.
But I think there's differences between overbuild and threatened overbuild, but I'll let the regulator answer that.
Yes, I think we had published this in this report that I mentioned already, and I think we are now looking at around. I'm not sure that we had. In the report, we had around 500 cases, and we now invest a part of these cases on the question of whether this is something of systematic abusive behavior. So, in other words, strategic overbuild. That's where we currently are, and where we try to assess whether this is the case.
Okay, many thanks for your patience. At this time of the day, we were a bit shocked when we came into this huge room, thinking that we now have to entertain such a room. There are still many issues, I think, that could be discussed in depth. I think we will discuss the pricing thing among ourselves. So let's see, we have opportunities, challenges, and roadblocks, and let's see what we're going to say at the next FTTH conference in London. I hope we can say something on progress. Thanks very much.
Thank you.